Saturday Night Live is easily one of the most influential and successful comedy shows in television history. Some people might even argue it is the greatest comedy show of all time, but believe it or not, during the early 1980s, SNL was on life support, and a lot of comedy fans thought the show would not make it into the next decade. But one talented 19-year-old stand-up comedian changed everything though, and prevented the show from a catastrophic demise. That comedian was Eddie Murphy. In today's video, we're going to explore the fundamental issues with Saturday Night Live in the early 1980s, how it negatively affected the show as a whole, and how the presence of Eddie Murphy ultimately saved SNL from an early grave. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. In the year 1980, showrunner Lorne Michaels left Saturday Night Live for a mixture of reasons. Lorne had started on SNL in 1975 as a writer and eventually worked his way up to executive producer and the show's life force. He basically built the show into what it is today from the ground up. Furthermore, one of the main reasons cited for Lorne's exit from the show was disputes with NBC executives. I don't know what these disputes were all about, but I think it's fair to assume that this, combined with many other factors, can all probably be classified under the umbrella term of creative burnout. Also, I don't know what Lorne Michaels does in his personal time, but I will say that drug culture during the 80s in New York City was very prevalent and really took a toll on a lot of creative people. Not to mention, Lorne was likely incredibly stressed from running such a massive operation at NBC. There's no concrete evidence that I can find that Lorne Michaels consistently abused substances or even did it at all, but given what we know about a lot of the SNL after parties and all the celebrations there were, whether sober or not, this lifestyle does take a toll on you quickly if you're not careful. Moreover, Lorne's absence would prove to be a challenge for Saturday Night Live given the enormous shoes that had to be filled. The temporary replacement for Lorne would be Gene Domanian, who had been the associate producer for previous seasons, but Lorne was not thrilled about this decision because he wanted the show to end with his departure. Even though season 6 would prove to be a tumultuous time on Saturday Night Live, Gene Domanian started to rebuild the cast, and one of the prospects she picked up was 19-year-old Eddie Murphy, who was the show's saving grace. It goes without saying that Eddie Murphy is, and always will be, a very talented comedian who was remarkably funny on stage when performing stand-up. He just so happened to also be a killer when it came to doing impressions, acting in comedy sketches, and also writing sketches to perform on the show. Eddie was multifaceted and proved to be the best cast member on Saturday Night Live at the time. Despite Eddie's raw talent, the show's ratings would fall off a cliff and really struggle to bring in the same viewership the show had when Lorne Michaels was running it. Of the viewers they had though, most of them were only there to watch Eddie Murphy, and without him, it's conceivable to believe that season 6 would have been the last season of SNL there ever was. It's a well-known fact that closed mouths do not get fed, which is why I'm going to take a second and promote my Patreon page, where you can pay just a couple bucks a month to get some exclusive content and help directly make my videos better for the channel. Shout out to all my patrons, thank you all so much. To make matters worse, Charles Rocket would slip up and accidentally drop an F-bomb live on the air, which led to his dismissal from the cast. NBC made some frantic decisions, one of which was Gene Domanian being fired given the drastic fall of the show's ratings, and she would end up being replaced by Dick Ebersol soon after. NBC president Brandon Tartikoff made this decision to hire Dick as a last resort to save Saturday Night Live, given his previous commercial success while producing the Olympic Games event and the NFL. The show ended up being successful while Dick was in charge for one main reason, because Dick immediately recognized Eddie Murphy's immense talent and didn't miss a single opportunity to use him. Gene Domanian may have hired Eddie, but Dick certainly milked Eddie's funny utter dry. That sounds a little gay, but you get the idea. Dick realized that if anything could help save the show right now, it would be Eddie Murphy's comedic aptitude and talent. We found out this information from veteran writer of Saturday Night Live, Jim Downey, who claimed that Dick devised the plan to keep popular characters in heavy rotation to help fix the ratings disaster during season 6. This concentration in Eddie's talents turned Eddie into a breakout star on SNL, with recurring characters in sketches such as Gumby, Mr. Robinson, Buckwheat, Velvet Jones, and plenty more where that came from. I think my personal favorite sketch from Eddie Murphy was his impression of Stevie Wonder. If you haven't seen this, you should totally give it a watch. If you're in the mood for a great Eddie Murphy impression, definitely turn this on. For the absolute pandemonium SNL was in after desperately trying to replace Lorne Michaels, Eddie Murphy seemed to be the exact bandage that the show needed for the time being. After 2 years of being on Saturday Night Live, Eddie Murphy was a fan favorite and dominated just about every single sketch he was a part of. It's not an exaggeration to say that during the early 1980s, Saturday Night Live was basically the Eddie Murphy show. Maybe Eddie Murphy and Friends if you're being generous. After the 1982 season of SNL, Eddie would begin appearing in big movies movies like 48 Hours, and he already started filming the movie Trading Places in early 1983. He eventually reached a point where SNL needed him much more than he needed the show, and Dick Ebersol knew that the 1982 season would be Eddie's penultimate year at SNL, so he immediately responded to this by planning the 1983 and 1984 season accordingly. Dick's plan was to have Eddie appear in half the shows throughout the season, which in this case was at least 10 out of the 20 shows they normally do. Not to mention, 1983 would be a huge year for Eddie Murphy as a comedian outside of SNL because he would release his debut comedy special Delirious, which was a massive success. The people wanted more from Eddie, and he would certainly deliver on that later on after his final year at Saturday Night Live. In the 4 years Eddie was on the show, he quite literally made the ratings do a 180 and surge in the right direction. In 1980, when Gene Domanian took over, nobody thought the show would survive, but Eddie Murphy really changed things and kept the show from going tits up. And Dick Ebersol even admits this point in the SNL book where he said, quote, "It would have been very difficult, I think, to have kept the show on the air without Eddie," end quote. Then in 1984, Eddie decided to leave the cast of Saturday Night Live, where he would go on to star in the movie Beverly Hills Cops. Then a few years later, he starred in The Golden Child. Then the following year, Eddie would release the comedy special Raw, which ended up becoming the highest grossing stand-up comedy special of all time. A record that is yet to be touched and is still held by Eddie to this day, even as he has stepped away from stand-up comedy entirely. I say all of this to prove just how fucking successful Eddie Murphy was on Saturday Night Live and all the eyes he brought to the show while Lorne Michaels was on sabbatical. It was also during a period where comedy fans' expectations for the show could not have been lower and ratings were a complete and utter disaster. So Dick appointed Eddie to turn the sinking ship around and ultimately save SNL. Some of you may say that this is bad because of what SNL has evolved into today, but that's for you to decide. I, for one, am very happy that Saturday Night Live survived, because if it didn't, we wouldn't have gotten to see Norm Macdonald on Saturday Night Live, Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Chris Rock, and all the other bad boys of SNL you could name. Pretty much every good thing you could possibly think of from Saturday Night Live would have never happened in the first place, and maybe some comedians we've come to know and love would have never had their big breakthrough to the limelight. SNL is also the reason that Shane Gillis was fired. Without SNL, we would have never gotten this famous quote from Shane Gillis on the Joe Rogan Experience.
If I get fired here, whatever, I'll just go do Joe Rogan next week and I'll be fine. Anyway, I thought that was funny. No?
What?
I fucking love Shane. Eventually, Lorne Michaels would return to SNL, and his first season back was actually one of the worst seasons, if not the worst, in SNL history. And if you want to find out more about that, here's a video where I talk all about that season. Anyway, that's how Eddie Murphy saved SNL. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to the channel. That's all I got for you guys today. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.